see everybody here tonight. Thank the Lord for another opportunity to have. Everybody, let's get our hymn books as we stand as we open our service. 372. Let's all stand as a church hymnal. Homeward Christian Soldier. 372. 372. All right. Same book, 212. You know that one? Keep on the firing line.
They've got a song director there that you have got to go see. He would take that song and be running up down the aisle. I'm honest, he's one of the greatest song directors. And believe it or not, he has the Spirit of God with him also. I mean, go there weeping and crying. And I think Brother Eddie knows about him. Maybe Brother Robbie, first name. He got saved not many years ago out of the life of sin. Brother, I tell you, that guy is a blessing. I love to go there just to see him lead the singing. All right, thank you. Let me see.
Good evening, church. Amen. I just want to ask one prayer request and say thank you guys for our Bible classes on Monday night. I hope you guys are getting a blessing out of that first class. Amen. If you're not enjoying the classes, I'm enjoying it. Say, well, you're a little wild. Well, that's my time. It's a blessing. I appreciate the good turnout. Also, if you make notes about prayer, tomorrow afternoon, got a special private prayer request about Trinity Baptist Church in Colorado. That's all I'm going to say for now. And I just want to ask you if you would just ask for the Lord's will. That's all I'm asking, and then we'll give you details later, Lord willing. But I appreciate those of you who pray, and we're looking forward to a good service tonight. Thank you. That prayer tomorrow, if you want to be praying at a specific time, if you're able, 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Just pray for Brother Caleb and pray for God's leadership. Listen, ain't nothing bad going on. Could be something wonderful, so just help him pray, okay? And man, he can't count on his church at home to pray. Anyway, so let's really, if you can't pray at 3:30, that don't matter. It don't matter, just pray. Just pray. Pray on your way to work. Pray at your lunch break. But pray for Caleb tomorrow. Okay? Just pray God's will would be done. Amen? Let's see a couple of things right quick. And man, that was good singing for a Wednesday night. I enjoyed that. I love that kind of singing. Onward, Christian soldier. Keep on the firing line. Sounds kind of militant, don't it? Amen. I kind of like that stuff. That's marching music right there for me. Amen. That'll get you excited and prepared for the service tonight. Amen. Let's see, Sunday they will be doing the bridal shower baskets up here for Miss Kristen Clausen and Brother Alex. And we always announce it, but Kristen has been a spark plug around this place just about her whole life. I don't know how many years it's been, but she's been a worker since the day she's got here. And if you've been sick, she probably comes solid. I mean, she's a blessing. And she keeps it up, and we'll make her a deacon. Amen? That's a joke. Amen? She'd probably take the job. And we want to be a blessing to her for her wedding on Sunday. So please don't forget about that. And then Sunday night, just for a little bit after church, Rachel, stand up right there, if you would. Rachel is moving to Maryland with her sister, and Sunday night will be her last night. So my wife has put together just a little fellowship after church on Sunday night. If you want to know what to bring, see Sister Angie. She'll tell you. It's no big deal. We're not going all out, full-blown crazy. We just want to get together and fellowship with her for a little bit, and maybe have a glass of tea, cookies, or something. Anyway, what? Finger food, fried chicken and pork chops. Finger food. No, I'm kidding. Just snack stuff. And we'll just have a good time of fellowship with her on Sunday night, all right? And boy, it is a blessing to have Brother Todd back on the keyboard tonight. As soon as I found out he had an accident, my first thought was, well, I hope he didn't hurt his hand. I did it is good to have him back. Amen. We love Brother Todd. Appreciate him. Amen. So let's have our ushers right quick, and we'll take up tonight's offering. Listen, while they're coming, Brother Freddie already said something about the Bible class on Monday night. Our first class, which is our preacher's class, this semester, the whole thing is about prayer and your personal prayer life. And we're not just teaching on prayer. We're actually taking the older guys, not necessarily older, but the ones who have been saved longer, and we're praying over and with these young men. And it has been precious. And I began to pray last night with Brother Drew. Where he went, Brother Drew, somewhere right in front of my face. I'm looking over there where you were sitting, brother. Anyway, I was praying for Brother Drew and Timothy, and I'm telling you, it was one of those special times with Brother Drew. The Lord just came down. Boy, it was rich, man. I wouldn't take nothing for it. But listen, you don't have to be a preacher to come to that first class. You do have to be a male. You have to be a man. It's a men's class, or a young men's class. And I want to encourage you. You're welcome to come. You're welcome to come to all the classes. But man, I'm telling you, this thing has been really, really good. It's been transforming. And I'm telling you, you get your prayer life in order, it gets the rest of your life in order. Amen. Oh, anyway, let's bow our heads and we'll go to the Lord in prayer and ask the Lord to bless our offering tonight. Please pray for Brother Travis Freeman. He'll be preaching in our teen service tonight, and Brother Drew Morrison. Both these boys are going to be preaching tonight. So pray for them. Amen. Somebody said, well, can you just 4 months in, can you be preaching? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That lady at the well, she ran preaching as soon as she got filled up for that water. Amen. So he's got something to tell. God's done a work in his life. Amen. So you pray for these young men as they preach to our teenagers tonight. All right? Let's bow our heads and we'll pray. Jeremiah, ask the Lord to bless the offering tonight.
Thank you, Lord, for this day. Just thank you for let us wake up another day, and we're just letting us see your beautiful creation. I pray you just bless the Travis and bless the Drew, and I pray you just bless Brother Eddie, Lord, as he preaches, and I pray you just fill them up and fill us up, Lord, and I pray you just help all the people that have come tonight. I pray for the people that have not come tonight, Lord, that are not feeling good, that are not sick, Lord, I pray that you just help them to feel better, Lord, and we'll set them up the next service. We just pray you bless this offering, bless the Caleb, and bless our church, and whatever the need is, Lord, fill it. We love you. Just thank you for being so good to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Somebody's hand, Patch, Pee Wee, and teams are dismissed. Don't run. I appreciate the good time of fellowship. Ashley and Miss Elizabeth, come on. Listen, they're going to sing one or two. Let's just worship a little bit tonight. How many of you got something to praise Him for? Every one of us, man. There ought to be some personal praise in your life. Where you just praise God when you're all alone. But then it's good when we can come together and do it corporately. Lift up our voices. Let the Lord know we love Him and appreciate Him. Amen. So let's just worship Him tonight. Y'all go ahead and sing. Let's just mind the Lord.
David
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Look, Todd, you gotta come back. Is it okay? I don't think we need to hurry. I want to think this tonight. What I will, I'll preach and share a little thought with you. My heart all day has been to be short on the message and long on prayer. I was going to sing a song before we preach tonight. Just continue to mind the Lord. What sweet spirit in you. It's time to get some help. Amen. God bless you. Whenever you're
There are walls made by man
friends, brothers and sisters, we have to watch them go through things. You ever been in a situation where you just felt absolutely helpless?
Amen.
You don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Literally, there's nothing you can do. But yet there is. We can pray. Pray. Thank you, Brother Tom. Appreciate these guys just being spot on, just whatever, and singing. Amen. What a blessing. Take your Bible, go to Acts chapter number 12 tonight. Acts chapter number 12. Read a little story about Peter tonight. Acts chapter number 12. Say amen when you get there. Acts chapter number 12, the Bible said, Now, about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church. And he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. When he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. And Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church. And when Herod would have brought him forth the same night, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. They must have been mighty scared of Peter. Did you notice that? All he done was preach. It wasn't like he was a mass murderer. He was sleeping between 2 soldiers, and the Bible said bound with 2 chains. I just thought that's a big deal. They was really scared he was going to get away. And if they really knew that soldiers and chains couldn't hold him. The Bible said in verse 7, And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison. And he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Rise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself, and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto him, Cast thy garment about thee, and follow me. And he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true, which was being done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. In other words, he thinks he's dreaming. When they were past the first and the second ward, they came unto the iron gate that leadeth unto the city, which opened to them of its own accord. And they went out and passed on through one street. And forthwith the angel departed from him. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a surety that the Lord hath sent his angel, and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod, and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. And when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken, named Rhoda. And when she knew Peter's voice, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in and told how Peter stood before the gate. And they said unto her, Thou art mad. But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, It is his angel. But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. But he, beckoning unto them with the hand to hold their peace, declared unto them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, Go show these things unto James and to the brethren. And he departed and went into another place. And I'm going to stop right there tonight. For several weeks now, I don't know how many weeks we are in our Bible classes. We, on Monday night, have been talking to our men
and our young men about the importance of their personal prayer life. On Monday night, I spoke just briefly about our quiet time. Just a time to get away with you and God. That's very important. Would you agree that for the relationship of the relationship of a husband and wife, it's important that you have some time together? Without the kids and without the hustle and bustle, and I'm not talking about intimacy, I'm just talking about some time together. Well, that's the same way with your relationship with the Lord. You need time with Him. And we've been making a big deal out of our personal prayer life and our personal time with God, but I in no way want to minimize our time in prayer together. I think one is as important as the other. I think one builds upon the other. If I've got a personal prayer life, then my corporate prayer life is going to be that much more. Amen? And if I get involved enough in corporate prayer, when I mean corporate, I'm talking about us together as a church. I believe that my prayers at home will be enhanced by that corporate prayer. You know what encourages me to pray? Hearing somebody pray. Let me give you an illustration. I can close my eyes tonight and listen, and I can hear in my head Brother Jay Bice standing right there praying. I can close my eyes and I can hear Brother J.M. Brooks praying. I can close my eyes and I can hear Buddy Hayes praying. You say just them three? Those are the three that stand out more than anybody I have ever known. They have a way of communicating with God that made me want to pray. I could hear those men pray, and I'm like, Lord, I want to pray like that. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So our corporate prayer together encourages me to do better in my personal prayer. You hear them men pray, and you knew automatically church wasn't the only place they got it done. Their relationship went a little further than a Sunday morning or Sunday night somebody called on you to pray. Their prayer life was a little bit deeper than that. Amen? Amen. So that corporate prayer encourages me to pray. We've been having our students read one of the books by E.M. Bounds. E.M. Bounds he's known as a man of prayer. He died in the early 1900s, and he wrote several books, but they took those books and broke them down into series, and I've got one of those little series, but anyway, the students have been reading the book. What's the book, Brother Freddie? The Power of Prayer, Power Through Prayer. But anyway, I've been looking through another book that I have at home, and I wrote down some quotes tonight about prayer and God's house. That's a chapter in this little book that I'm reading. Prayer and the House of God. I would say one of the greatest things lacking in our church is prayer. Amen. Probably one of the most important things we could do together as a church, but one of the things we do the least. Let me read you some of this stuff right here. E.M. Bounds said that prayer is always in place in the house of God. He said when prayer is a stranger there, it ceases to be God's house at all. Wow. Jesus said in Matthew, I wrote it down, Matthew chapter number 12 and verse number 13, and it's recorded in 3 of the Gospels, when he ran the money changers out of the temple. You remember what he told them? Yeah. He said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. And I believe in Luke, he said, shall be called a house of prayer by all nations. Yeah. So Jesus, therefore, puts on the church the preeminence of prayer. He didn't say, my house shall be called a house of preaching. Though it's important. He didn't say, my house shall be called a house of teaching. Though it's important. But he said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. And it seems funny that a house that should be called the house of prayer, then that be the thing we do the least of. Are we okay? E.M. Bound says, the life, power, and glory of any church is prayer. He said, without prayer, a church is like a body without spirit. It is just a dead, inanimate thing. Amen. Wow. Let me read that again. He said, without prayer, a church is like a body without spirit. It is just a dead, inanimate thing. Amen. He went on to say, when prayer is set aside, God is outlawed. When prayer is set aside, God is outlawed. I was in a meeting a while back, and a fellow was called on to pray. And this just stuck in my mind. I forgot about it till today. The Lord brought it back to my memory. But a fellow was called on to pray to open the meetings. Just like tonight. I don't know, I was in the back. I don't know who Brother Charles had prayed, but he asked somebody to pray. Might have done it himself. I don't know who prayed. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But they called on this fellow to pray. Well, the man stood up to pray and he began to weep. Like Brother David does a lot of times in taking up the offering. Brother, I think that's precious. Amen. But this fellow stood up and he began to weep and he began to cry out to God. And it seemed like, Brother Freddie, that he just kind of forgot who he was. Yeah. And he started praying, and 3 minutes in, people were peeking up. 5 minutes in, everybody was raised their head and was looking at him. And the pastor was doing like this. I'm talking about this guy was caught up in the third heaven and was ringing heaven's bells. Probably prayed for a good 8 to 10 minutes. You think, well, that's not long. It is in a service. Right. And I'm telling you, brother, this guy was praying heaven down. And we went out to eat after that service, and the preacher said, well, I know one thing. I'll never call on that brother to pray again. I said, my soul, brother, it didn't bother me. I thought it was good. What I'm trying to say is something's wrong when prayer interrupts our program. Say it again. Something's wrong when prayer interrupts our program. When prayer gets in the way of preaching. When prayer gets in the way of those that might sing. I would like to say that prayer shouldn't get in the way of anything. I'd like to say that nothing else should get in the way of prayer. But over the years, I believe, Brother Jack, we have been conditioned. Every Baptist church I know of that's still what we would call an old-fashioned or a traditional Baptist church, we've all pretty much got the same order of service. Would you agree? I mean, I preach all over this country. It's about the same. There are little differences here and there, but it's about the same everywhere you go. Right. I don't know who thumped that up, but I think maybe they thumped wrong. And it might be hard to break some habits. But I remember when Wednesday night was called prayer meeting. Some of y'all would be upset if we came in on Wednesday night and just prayed. My brother Eddie didn't even preach. I'm afraid we're minoring on a major. And I'm not preaching at you. I'm preaching to us. Because I feel convicted about it. Amen. He said, when prayer is set aside, God is outlawed. He said the church, it is a place where the business of making praying people out of prayerless people is done. He said the church is the place where the business of making praying people out of prayerless people is done. You get a hold of those little books and it'll make you feel about that talk. And I've been in them every day since we started. I've got 4 or 5 of them and they're different titles for each one, but it's all about prayer. I don't think Brother Charles, the man, ever had written a book on anything else but the subject of prayer. I'd like to have some men around like him today. I've only known of a few in my lifetime who had devoted their lives to the ministry of prayer. Only a few. Brother Tom Williams is the first one to come to mind. Brother Ralph Sexton, as he puts up that tent around the country, there's a man he's never seen during the meeting. Doesn't matter if the meeting goes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that man is laying under that platform praying. He's there not to help win people to Christ, not to invite people to the meeting, but to lay under that platform and pray. The ministry of prayer. How's your ministry looking? I would like for the testimony of people about this church as they leave to say, man, that's the prayingest bunch I've ever seen. I'm guilty. We ought to pray together. Lord knows we've got a lot to pray about. Matter of fact, I'm going to hush in just a minute and we're going to do something a little bit different. We've got our prayer sheets and we'll take them home, but we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We're going to pray about a need, and we're going to do it together, corporately as a church and as a family. I want to point out a couple of things in our story, and I promise I'm not going to be but just a few minutes, and we're going to pray. But I want you to notice in verse number 5, Peter is down there in the prison. In verse number 5, the Bible said, Peter therefore was kept in prison, but... Now we've said 1,000 times over what that conjunction is and what it means. That little word but. Peter's in prison, but. And a lot of times after the but, we have God. Yeah. But this time after the but, we've got something just as vital and just as important. It says, but prayer. Yes. Peter's in prison, but prayer. I believe we could preach an entire message right there, just but prayer. Amen. But prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for Him. Verse number 12, the Bible said, when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. Corporate prayer does a few things for us as a church and for us as individuals. Number one, I believe the number one thing on their prayer list, if maybe not the only thing on their prayer list in verse number 5, was Simon Peter. The Bible said they specifically made prayer unto God for Him. Without ceasing. They made prayer unto God for Him. Paul requests prayer for himself. You remember that? Yes, right. We have prayer requests on the sheet that went around tonight. That is people asking you to join in with them and pray about a situation in their life. Here's what I want to tell you right quickly. Prayer unifies us as a church. Amen. When we get down to pray about a certain thing which we're about to do, it unifies. What's unified? It gets us in the same frame of mind. It gets us thinking about the same thing. It gets us agonizing with God about the same thing. It gets us weeping about the same thing. And it gets us carrying the same burden.
Yes.
It unifies us. It makes us stronger. Why is there so little unity in churches all over our country? Because there's so little prayer.
Amen. Help us. Amen.
I don't want to belabor this very long, but you remember what Jesus said to His disciples when He went a little further and fell on His face? Y'all remember that? And He came back and the two disciples were sleeping. Remember what He said? Couldn't you watch with me 1 hour? You know what He was saying? Pray with me. Pray with me. Let's pray together. It's not an exciting subject, is it? People look so bored, Brother John. Prayer. It'd be exciting if you get a hold of it. It's not exciting because the devil's convinced us it doesn't work. It's not exciting because the devil's told you you can't get a prayer past the ceiling. I'm here to tell you you're a child of God. You can pray and God will hear you.
Amen.
And if I don't believe this book, we might as well fold it up and go to the house. I'm here to tell you God will hear us as we come together and pray. About the same thing.
Amen.
Prayer unifies us. It's hard to fight each other when you're both going in the same direction. Caring and loving the same thing. Weeping over the same thing. We okay?
Yes.
Prayer unifies us. Now, when Peter came to Mary's house, had there been nobody there but Mary, it'd have still been good.
Yeah.
Little Rhoda runs to the door, only time she's ever mentioned. Little Rhoda runs to the door, and she gets, I no doubt they're praying for Peter.
Yes, brother.
I can see them gathered around in that living room. There was no physical church building. They met in people's houses and homes, and here they are laying in the floor, and they're praying, probably just no dirt floor, and they're laying down there in that floor, and they're praying, oh God, don't let them harm Peter, or they're going to kill him after Easter. Oh Lord, and boy, delivering God, oh God. And Rhoda hears somebody knocking. Probably thinks it's a soldier. Well, they get caught, they in trouble too. She goes, I don't know if they had peepholes. But she goes and she looks out the peephole, Brother Jeff, or the little hole in the gate, and she goes, it's Peter! And she don't even open the door. She gets so excited, she's beside herself. She don't even open the door. She goes running back in. Yahweh, you don't believe that?
Yeah.
Shut up, girl. We're praying. No, Peter's at the door. Like, you've lost your mind. We in here praying for him. He's in prison. You see the ghost. Can you imagine the excitement? Peter said, hey! Hurry up, let me in! I don't want to wind up back where it was on the door. They on the door, they no sooner come off their knees and they're facing the answer.
Yeah.
Woo! Together of their prayers. Let me tell you something to build a family.
Yeah.
Praying together. And then seeing eyeball to eyeball the answer
Amen, brother.
to the thing that we've all prayed about together.
Amen. Right.
Case in point,
Right there.
that's the awful.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
A couple of weeks ago, I don't think she was here, but Brother David was. I had emptied my office at home because we were repainting and putting in new floors, and and I was kind of going through everything as I put it back in and just sorted through stuff, and I found the calendar sheet where we prayed and fasted for 21 days for Sister Ashley. Twice. And I thought, you know what? These aren't doing me any good. I'm going to take them to her. She'll always have the names of the people who signed up. We prayed for 21 days together. Did without food. No sooner we get time praying than God begins to move. And we get, it's been how many years now? 10. And we're still rejoicing together. Why? Because we fasted together and we prayed together. And in that area we still have a common bond.
Yes.
Prayer unifies us as a church. It not only unifies us, but it makes us stronger as a church. Too many weak-kneed churches in our country. I don't mean this to come out wrong, but I can't think of another way to say it. You see enough answered prayer together as a church, you might get a little cocky. That's probably not a good word. Maybe bold. That's better, isn't it? Cocky would be proud like we done something. Well, we didn't do it at all.
That's right. Yeah.
God just let us have a little part in praying together. And we see prayer answered. And we feel a little bolder. And we feel a little stronger. And we say, what can we pray for next?
Right.
When we see the power of God, don't you think these people in verse number 5 and verse number 12 that prayed together without ceasing to God for Him, don't you think that maybe their faith was a little bit stronger after Peter came knocking at the door?
Amen. Yeah.
I'd say it probably pumped them up a little bit. Not only unified them, but it strengthened them as a church. Lastly, I'll say this. Got a lot more I can give you. May preach some more on it a little bit later. But I think, Brother Freddie, it probably encouraged them. I think it probably encouraged them. You know what Peter had to do? Peter had to say, shh, easy. They got excited. I'm encouraged when I ask God for something and He does it. I get encouraged when we pray about something together as a church. And He does it. I prayed today and I said, Lord, why don't you give us something on a regular basis? Just something, whatever it is that you want us to pray for together. He already loaded my wagon.
Oh, I'm sure.
Some things that we need to pray for specifically together. Because it involves you as much as it does me. Corporate prayer. I think we've lost something. One of the greatest weapons in our arsenal as a church.
That's right.
That's the weapon of prayer. Prayer is mentioned in Ephesians where he talks about the whole armor of God. Prayer. Without prayer, church, we're nothing. I'm going to read these little quotes again and we're going to pray tonight. He said, prayer is always in place in the house of God. He said, when prayer is a stranger there, it ceases to be the house of God at all. He said, the life, the power, and the glory of any church is prayer. He said, without prayer, a church is like a body without spirit. It is just a dead, inanimate thing. He said, when prayer is set aside, God is outlawed. He said, it is a place where the business of making praying people out of prayerless people is done. I could have wrote down 100 of these and read it to you tonight. I believe that man truly believed in his heart everything that he wrote. I don't think he only believed it, I think he practiced it. Why would we call it a house of prayer when so little of it is done? Brother David, you got our prayer sheet. Now listen to me tonight. Tonight, I've asked to do this several times and just had an altar call, but not tonight. And I'm sure it's on that prayer sheet somewhere, but I don't want that interfering with your prayer tonight. Fold it up and put it in the Bible. More important than buildings or finances and all that kind of stuff that the church prays for. More important than that is our people.
Amen. Amen.
Tonight there is a mother here who is a little discouraged. Miss Kelly. She said, Katie Jane, it's back up to the highest percent the oxygen they can give. Is that right? I say it right. In other words, her breathing is not better, it's not worse.
Yeah.
I want us to gather around this altar, women over here, men over here. I want us to pray tonight for Katie Jane. Nothing else. We'll pray over the prayer sheet later, but corporately together. I want God to hear our voices in unison tonight in prayer for that little baby.
Yes.
If it was your baby, you'd be for it.
Yes, sir. That's right. Amen.
If it was your sister's baby, you'd be for it.
Amen.
Well, that's our sister.
Amen.
So I want you to gather around this altar together. Come on. Sister Shelley, why don't you get right down here over the middle somewhere? We'll get you ladies gather around. And she's also got a sick little boy at home. And Jeremy too. She's got two sick little boys. So let's just in sincerity, in all our hearts tonight, let's pray for this little baby. Brother Charles, now wherever you are, I want you to lead us.
One
Lord, your name Lord, like Lord, the body, Lord, I pray, Father, Lord, all pray with all faith, with all prayer, and supplication for the Spirit, Lord, for all the saints, Lord, all prayer, Lord, we please the precious blood of Jesus. that's Lord of the Spirit of prayer. God in our life. We love you. We love you. With all our heart, God, we believe that.
This Friday night after RU, we're going to pray again if anybody wants to join me.
Amen.
After your RU, we'll pray again.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes. 8:30 down
Angel, go ahead, Teresa.
Back tried to the baby, Sept 2 months old. He's 3 months old, he got pneumonia. So 3 or 4 months later, he got it again. He just kept getting sick. So finally, they sent him to start a trial, and it is a test, and they found out it was aspiratic, which means most people they spit up, it comes out, but his temperature is quite low. So every time you get a cold or anything, it says pneumonia. After about 3 or 4 years old, he had something like 5 miles. He had RSV spots. He got the swab flu. I'm sure he gave it to Donna. I'm sorry. My church, this Lord, she was in our net. We were praying, and we were the Lord, God touch me. Because not only was we going through that, and we had to go that, we had to break up 2 or 3 times a night during treatment. And I have to say, the last 10 years, he's not had any health problems, and I know God touched him. I want you to keep praying. God has a reason. I don't know why, if it's because the devil is fighting so hard against him when he knows where
Might be on to something, church. Amen. I can give you a list, but we're going to hit them one at a time. We're going to pray.
That's good.
Thank you for helping tonight. So I didn't do anything. Oh, yeah, we did.
Yes, yes.
As I prayed, I could hear all these prayers because I could hear the weeping. Oh, don't you think God wasn't listening tonight?
Yeah.
Thank you for your help. Amen. Let's stand our feet. Let's bow our heads. We're just going to